Hello everyone, welcome back. In the past 3 days, we have learned a lot of concepts on Rails, like how to create routes and how to name routes, then what are controllers and how to create such controllers in Rails, and then an introduction to models and how to create such models in Rails, and then interacting with those models to get some data from the database and display those data in our views. That's we have done in index.html.arb. And let's see what we're gonna learn today. Today we're gonna learn something more on models, and then we're gonna learn one of the most useful tool or gem in Rails called byebug. Byebug will help us to learn Rails even more easier and also debug our app more easier. And then we will learn one of the core concept in every web applications, that is sending data from your application to the server through forms. Right, with that said, let's get started. So we have our blog app open, and now let's see something more on our model. So for that, as usual, let us go into our console, that is interactive Ruby terminal, with all our Rails application classes loaded. For that, we execute the command Rails space C or Rails console, and now we're gonna get the first object in our table called posts. So how we do that? For that, I have to create a variable. Let me call the variable as post, and now I have to get the first record in my database over here. Let me go into my PHP admin. I have a record here called first post and the body first post array. So I need to fetch this first record, whichever first in my table. For that, there is a method which is a static method, hence we need to use the class name to call that method post dot first. So what does this first method do? This first method just gets the first record in the table. So now here you can see we have only one record with the title as first post and the body as first post array, and also the ID is 2, which is right here. So this is how we get the first record in our table. And let's see some more on this object. So this object, this post object, has another method called update. So this update method takes a hash, right? This hash has two key value pair options. You have to give the title, which is, I'm gonna change the title here to title editor, something like that. Okay, so here in this hash you can give whatever the fields you want to edit in this particular object. So this object represents the first record in the table. So in that record I want to change the title to a new name. So what I do, I take the object, call a method called update, which takes a hash. As you may know, in Ruby, a hash is nothing but like a key value pair within an array. So you give the key as title, which is the attribute which is to be updated, and then you give the value as title edited. And now if I hit enter, what it does, it executes the query update post set title is equal to title editor. Now if I go to my database and click on browse, I would see that title is getting updated to title editor. So I can also update both the title and the body as follows. So I can say title as title editor and the body as body editor. Now this hash can have a number of key value pair depending on the number of attributes you want to update in that particular object. In the post object, if I want to update only title, I can give only the title key. If I want to update both title and the body, I need to give both the title and the body key. So this time I'm going to call title editor again as the title and the body as body editor. And if I hit enter, it again calls the update method in the SQL and updates our record. So that's it. So this is how we actually update a record in our table using this model object. And the next important method which we're gonna learn today is called find. So what is this find? So this find is gonna find a particular record in our table. So let's say I want to find a record in this table which has an ID 2. So what I do is I create an object to store that particular record, that is I'm going to call it as post equals, and this method is going to be a static method which should be called on the class name. So I'm using the class name here, and that has a method which is a static method called find, and this takes the argument as an id. Here I have to give the id as 2. If I give the id as 2, what it does, it goes to the database and finds which record has the id 2. So here the title edited again has the id 2, so it fetches that particular record. Suppose if I have more than one record, let me say I give it as second post, and update the record. Now if I have two records, now if I go ahead and now if I type post.find 3, I would get the record with the id 3, which is the second post just be created. So this is how you find a record in the table using the post model, right? And the next thing we're gonna learn is something called mass assignment. So what is mass assignment? Let me say I'm gonna create a new object for the model post. So for that I create a variable post, and as usual I call the constructor on the post class, that is post.new. So now I have a new object. Now what I have to do, I have to assign all the attributes a value. So I say title equal to something and the body equal to something, like this is test, and I say post.body is equal to something. So this is completely fine. But suppose if I have hundreds of attributes in this post object, I have to go to each object and say post that this attribute is this and this attribute this. This is really a painful process. So rather than doing this, there is an even more better way of doing or assigning values to the attributes, that is called mass assignment. So that's done by creating an object post is equals post.new. Rather than directly creating the object with .new, we can pass some arguments to this new method. As I said, this new is nothing but the constructor which constructs this object. So in Java or C++, you might have learned a constructor may also take arguments, and those arguments initialize a particular object. Here what's the argument? Here the argument is again a hash. So this hash is nothing but a key value pair. So what's the key? The key is going to be the attribute to which you want to assign the value, and the value is going to be what is to be assigned to that particular key. Here I have two attributes called title and body. So if I want to give title a value, I should use the key as title and the value as something like new title. Let me say like that. And then I have to create another key with the key as body and the value as new body. So now what happens, this new constructor takes this hash as an input and demantles this hash and finds if it has a key title, then take the attribute in this post object and assign the value what that key has. So if I hit enter, what happens is, if you see, I have created an object called post which has no id, as I have not given the id, but it has a title with new title which I gave it in the hash, and a body which says new body which I gave in the hash. So this is called mass assignment. Why it's called mass assignment? We take all the attributes and mass assign it to the object in the constructor itself. So this is the preferred method of assigning values to object in the model. So this is called mass assignment. So with that said, I hope we have one more method to be learned in this particular what to say model. Okay, so we have seen how to create a object in the model and apply that particular object to the database so that it is stored in the database, and then we have seen how to update a particular object which is already existing in the particular table. And next is what is remaining is how to destroy or delete a particular record in the table. So for that, first we have to find the record which we want to delete. So for finding a particular record in the table, we can use the find method, right? So what I do, I first find the particular record in the table and store it in an object called post, and this find method is gonna be a static method, so I'm calling it on the class name. So post dot find, I want to find the last record which is 3, and you can give any id here. which you want to destroy, and then this post has the has the record which I want to delete. So what I can do, I take the object and I call a method on it called destroy. So this in this object, if I call update and give a hash, it's gonna update the value. Similarly, if I'm gonna call the method destroy on this object, what it's gonna do, it's gonna destroy object or destroy the particular record by calling the delete query. So now if I go and browse, I'm not gonna see that particular record. So this is the way you interact with the database using the model, right? So that's it. Now what we're gonna see next is what's called a byebug. So what's a byebug? So now if you go to a gem file, which is in your root folder, and if you scroll down at the bottom, you will see a gem called byebug. So what is this byebug? This byebug, as you may know, this is a gem, and this helps us to debug our Rails application. And if you might have already known, in other applications like Java or C++, you can debug an application by creating breakpoints, which you do by putting a small red dot by clicking on the left side of your editor. So those are called breakpoints. So here how we create breakpoints in Rails. Here you can create a breakpoint by simply typing in the function name called byebug. Actually, this byebug is a method which is actually defined in this gem file over here. This gem file has installed this byebug gem, which has the method called byebug. So whenever this byebug method is called, wherever, you can call this in the model, you can call this in the controller, you can call this in the views. So whenever the Rails hits this particular point and calls this method, what happens is the whole app is gonna freeze, and you can go ahead and debug the application. So this would be more understandable if we go ahead and see what happens. Now if I go ahead and we have the app, now if I reload, what are the steps it's gonna happen? First, the Rails is gonna go to the routes file and find what are the routes available, and it's gonna find the controller to which the request is to be forwarded, and it finds that the post controller is what is to handle this request. So it goes to post controller, and then it calls a particular action in this controller called index, which you have specified in the routes file, and then it executes this method called index, and the first line will be executed. Whenever it hits the second line, what happens is the whole app is gonna freeze. How it's gonna freeze? Let's reload. Now if you see, the page is going on reloading, but it's not giving back as a response. So what happened? So for that, you go to your terminal where you are running your server, and in your server file, that is your terminal where you are running your server, you would find something like this, which says something like this, byebug, and above you can see the place where you have placed the method byebug. So what is it saying? That it has executed up to this method called at post is equal to post.all, and it's waiting at this point called end. So now here we can step in and step out and do whatever debugging process we want. But what I'm interested here is, if you can see, up to this point, this variable called at post is declared. So what you can do right here is, you can type in that post method and find what is the value in that variable. This is helpful in debugging in lot of situations. So now if you see here, there can be lot of variables which might have been declared and initialized before this statement byebug. So whatever you want to see, what's the value in that particular variable, you can just type in the variable name, and you will get all the values in that particular variable. And sometimes you can even execute some methods on those variables and find what the value returns. So this helps in debugging your application and also understanding what is actually happening inside the Rails app. And if you want to finish the debugging session and you want to continue, you can type in C, which means continue. So what happens, it exits out of that particular breakpoint, and your app might have resumed by giving back the response, which is a HTML document, right? So that's what we wanted. So this is the use of byebug. What it does, it goes and places a breakpoint right in the place where you call it, and whenever the Rails app reaches that particular breakpoint, the whole app is gonna freeze and you won't be getting any kind of response, and the whole web page is gonna keep on loading. At that point, you go to the server or the terminal where you ran the Rails server, and you will find a small box saying byebug, and it will be showing at what point the application freezed, and you can use the variables which were declared before that breakpoint and inspect the values of those variables and get some great insights into your application. So we'll be using this byebug in our today's episode for knowing the values which were stored in a particular variable, which we will be seeing in a little later. Okay, so what's next? We have seen something on models, and next we have seen something on byebug, and the next thing is we're gonna learn something on forms. We're gonna send some data from the Rails application to from your browser to the Rails application through forms, right? So now let's go to our text editor. Now let's see the situation. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a form where the user can type in the values for creating a new post. So for that, what we need, we have to set up a route first, right? So for creating a form, first we need to create a route. So what I do, I go to my routes.rb and then I type in the route name, which I'm gonna give it as /post/new. So what's the reason for giving it as /post/new? This is more meaningful. As you see, I'm telling the Rails application that if the user gives /post/new, it means the users want to create a new post, right? So where do we redirect it? We give the control to the controller, which is the post controller, and here we're gonna call the method which is having the name new in the controller post controller, right? So why we are naming the controller action as new, and why we are giving the URL /post/new, there are some kind of need and meaning behind it, which we will be seeing in the later episodes. For time being, that you just understand that if you want to create a form for adding a new object or a new post to the database, you need to specify the route as /post/new, and the controller is going to be again the post, and the action is going to be new action, which is the new method. And I'm going to name this route as new post, right? Here I am giving the post as singular because we are gonna create a single post. So the path is gonna be called by the variable which is gonna be created in the view is gonna be called new underscore post underscore path, right? And next we need to define the method in our controller, which is def new end, right? So that's it. Next we have to create a view, so which is a HTML document, so that we can see something on our browser. So I'm gonna name this as new.html.erb, right? Now I'm gonna type in just here you create a new post, right? Now if I go back to my browser and say /post/new and hit enter, and I'm getting a HTML document says here you create a new post. So now here we're going to create a new form. So creating a form is pretty straightforward. You have to type in the form tag, and the action is where we submit the form. So where do we submit the form? Submitting the form is going to be again a URL, and this submission is going to be through either get or post request. So for time being, let me have the method is to be get, right? And where do we submit this form? So by convention, or by convention, which I say that Rails follows convention or configuration, you have to submit the form to a route to a URL something like this /post/create. So now if you see /post/new means showing the user a form which he needs to fill in, and if the user submits that particular form to this particular URL /post/create, then it means he has filled out the forms and he is submitting the data to this particular URL. And then what's the action to be handled? The action is going to be again called #create. So whenever the user wants to fill in the form, he goes to /post/new, and when he submits, it's gonna be submitted to this particular URL called /post/create, and I'm gonna call this particular uh, route as create route, right? Fine. Now if I go back to the new.html.erb, I'm gonna specify the action to be to /post/create. So this is where the form is gonna be getting submitted, and the method is gonna be get. And we need two fields actually. We need the title and also the body. So I'm gonna create a label first, and the label is gonna say title. Let me have the br tag there, and then I type in text field, which is going to have the name something like this. Now how to name the form controls? This is how you have to give the object name, which is post. We're going to store these values in an object in the model called post, right? So remember that when giving the name of the form control, you have to give first the name of the class or the object, which is post, and then within the square brackets you need to give in the attribute name. So I'm gonna give the attribute title. So here what it means is I'm gonna store this in an object of type post, and the attribute to be filled is title, right? So now next I give a br tag again, and then let's create another label there, and let me give it as body and another br tag, and then this time I'm gonna create a text area so that they can fill in a lot of text, and then I'm gonna give the name as the object name is gonna be post, and the attribute just to be filled is called body, right? And then we have to give a submit button. So for submit button I have a br tag, and then I type in the input. This time the type is not gonna be text, this is gonna be submit, and let me have the value of the submit button to say something like create post, right? Okay, so hope that's done. Let's go and see. We have a body, but we are not getting a text area. So what's the problem? Okay, I have made a typo, text area, not text area. Okay, so now we have a title, we have a body, and we have a create post. Now if I click create post, what happens? It says an unknown action, because we have not defined the action create in our controller post. So if I go to the post controller, I have only defined new, but I have not defined the action create. So I say def create and yet. So now if I go reload the page and create post, I'm gonna say okay, it says there is a template missing for this particular create. Yes, we don't have a template in our view saying create.html.erb. So in this template, what we do, we just say your post was successful. So which means we have saved this post in the database, right? So that's the meaning. So whenever we create post, it's gonna say okay, your post was successful. But if you go to the database, you're not gonna see any kind of post, because we are not still storing this value in our database. So even if I type something and give create post, it's gonna say your post was successful, but we are not still saving it in our database. So how we do it? So as I said, whatever operation you are doing in the database, that should be done in the controller, and the controller will interact with the particular table or record in the database and store it in the database. So for storing the data from the form to the database, it has to be done in this create method. So what we do, so how we get the data from the form? So here we get the data from the form through a hash called params. So what is params? To inspect or know what is params, which is a hash, what we do is we type in the byebug here, so that we can know what are the variables available to us in this particular create method. So if I save this one and go to my blog app, go back, reload the page, and if I click create post, it's gonna hang up there, because we have typed in a byebug statement and that create action. So now we go to our terminal where we have run the Rails server, and now we have the byebug statement right there. Now here I'm going to type in a variable name called params. So now if you see, I'm getting an output which is an object of type action controller colon parameters, which is actually a kind of an object declared in the Rails application, Rails framework. We have no need to worry about it. But if you see, we can see it's an hash which has a key called post, and inside that key we have another hash. Okay, you see, we have an kind of a key which is post, which is the name of the object, and then we have another hash inside it which has a key called title, which we have and has a value which I typed in the text field, and again it has another key called body and also has the value which I typed in the text area. So here you can understand that params is actually a hash which has two hashes inside it. And the first hash is actually has a key of by the name of the object which is post, and inside that there is another hash which has keys with attributes of that particular object post, which is title and body. So how we access this in our controller? So now let's go back to our controller. Now if I take out this byebug, what I'm gonna do is, first I'm gonna create a new post here. I'm gonna create it using the post.new, right? Okay, next we have to initialize this post with the title and the value and the body. So I say at post.title equals, so as I said, we can access the values through this params, and this is an hash. So how we access values in a hash? That's simple, just like arrays, but instead of the index as integers, we give here strings. I'm gonna say post, so I get the hash, which is, okay, if I go back, I want to first access this key, so I say inside the single quotes post, and then I will get back this particular hash, and in this hash I want a value from the key which has the name title. So I say inside another square brackets title. So what it does, it goes to the params and finds a key post, and which would have another hash with keys title and body, and I want the value of the key title. So, and that will be returned and stored in this dot title, and I'm gonna copy and paste the same thing and replace this title by body, and also this title here with body. And finally what we do, we have to save this in the database. So what we say, at post dot save, right? I save that. Now if I go back, type in some title like new post body, say create post, it says your post was successful. If I go and browse, you'd see we have a new post in the database stored from the form which has the title new post and body new post body. So what did just happen? What it did, it posted the whole form through a get request. So now if you can see, I have the values passed through the URL post title equal to new post and post body equal to new post body, and we can access it in the in hash something called params, and it has a key called post, which is the name of the object, and inside that post we have another hash as a value which has two keys, title and body, which are the attributes of a particular object post. So this is how we access a particular attribute inside the controller and store it into this particular object, and we save that object so it's reflected in the database. However, we are doing a very bad practice here. So you can see I have posted the form through a get request. So most of the time you should not be posting a form through get request, because the URL size is limited, and if the size of the data which is being posted is higher, you may lose some data. So what do? You do a post request. So how do you do a post request? That's again simple. Here I said that whatever request comes to this create action is gonna be get request, but now we're gonna do a post request to this, right? So I say replace this get by post. So now what happens is, whenever this particular URL gets a post request, you're gonna call the create option action in the post controller, right? Next thing is we have to go to the new.html.erb and replace this method to post. Right? If I save back and go back, and if I type new post with post method, and if I now with make sure that you reload the page and click create post, you get an error right here. It's called invalid authenticating token. So what's the problem and why this error happens? We will be seeing this later in the upcoming videos, but for time being, to avoid this error, what you have to do is you go to your app, and inside the folder called controllers you will find two controllers. One is post controller and application controller. Click on application controller and you will find a line called protect from forgery with exception. So what does this method means? You may have some knowledge on something called web attacks. In web attacks, what you can do is you can submit some false values to forms and can do some attacks by manipulating the forms. To avoid that, Rails does some kind of precautions which is given in the statement called protect from forgery with exception. So what we got was an exception, and it was it was raised because we Rails suspected that we are doing some kind of attack, but we are not doing an attack. But this is a good this is done by Rails to avoid attacks by other attackers. So to disable this, you just comment this line and go ahead, go back and try to submit your form again. This time you would submit your form successfully, and that would be saved in the database. And this time what we did a post request and not a get request, and that's clear because there is nothing in the URL, just the data was passed through the HTML body. Right? Okay, so now you may ask me, why did we go ahead and change this get to post? Okay, to answer your question, let's keep that as get itself. And if I go back and if I try to post, and now I'm gonna get a routing error. So what does this routing error means? Now if you see, it says no route matches post, and the method which HTTP method which came to this URL was post, and the pattern was slash post slash create. Even though this slash post slash create matches this URL here, but the method or the HTTP method which was done on this particular URL was not get, it was a post request. So what the browser did was a post request to the URL post slash create. So what Rails sees is it's a post request and it does not match with the get request which is defined in the routes.rb. So make sure that whenever you are doing a post request to a particular URL, you have to give the HTTP method in the which is the method we call in the routes.rb as post method, right? Great, that's it with that post and get request and how you submit the data to the form. So the next important thing which we're gonna see is in this post controller. Here as you can see, what we are doing is we are taking each attribute and assigning each attribute a value. So I have already said this is actually a very bad practice. Suppose your object has hundreds of attributes, you have to go ahead and assign each attribute one value at a time. So this is a bad practice. So what we do mass assignment. So what's mass assignment? What we do, we give the actual hash here, and this hash is gonna have a key which is gonna say the attribute name, and the value is gonna say what's the value to be stored in that particular attribute name. So this is called mass assignment. So now how we do mass assignment instead of assigning each attributes using this params hash. So for that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna again debug this application using byebug. So let me comment this for time being and just call byebug in my create action so that I can show you what we are going to do for mass assignment. So let me go ahead, go back and submit the form again, and this time it's gonna keep on waiting for response because we have typed in the method byebug in our create action. So let me go back to the terminal where I have the Rails server running. Now I have the byebug. Now here if I type in params, you'd see this it returning an hash, but in the mass assignment what I need is just this hash with title and body. I don't want a hash with post as a key and inside it another hash. I want a hash just with title and body as the key and value pair. So what we do for that, what we have is a method in params called .require. So this is a method called require. What it will do, it will filter through this hash and find another hash inside this hash and return just that hash. Here I have to give it a key. So if I give here the key as post, what it will do is it will go inside this hash and find a key which is called post, which is right here, and will return what is the value of this. So this is the meaning of this method. What it requires is it will take a particular key and will return what's the value of it. So if I hit enter, now you can see I am getting just a hash with title and body. So I can assign this directly into the new method because I am having a hash just with title and body as the attributes. So but however we can't do this directly. We have to call another method on this called permit. So what does this permit is? This method permit is for some kind of security reasons which we will be discussing in our future videos, but for time being understand that if I'm going to allow, if I'm going to filter through to the params hash and find a particular hash and I'm going to do mass assignment, you have to call a permit method which is going to list, which is going to say these are the attributes which are to be allowed in this particular hash. Suppose here if I say just title, I would get back the hash only with title. I won't get body. But if I say title comma colon body, I'm gonna get the hash with both title and body. So now what this permit method does is it gets the hash which is given by this require method, and it's gonna again filter through it and allow only particular parameters or particular attributes. So this is helpful when we want to allow only particular attributes to be saved in the model. Suppose let's imagine you're gonna do the mass assignment and you want only the user to give in the data for title and body. Suppose the user is an attacker and he manipulates the form and gives the value for ID created and updated, but those values should not be changed by the user. It should be handled only by us. But if the attacker gives those values, what happens? All those values will be also changed in the model. So to avoid that, we are telling Rails whatever the data that is sent through the form, allow only title and body. Don't allow any other values. Even if the user submits ID or created and submitted attributes, avoid those values. So that's what is called this permit method, right? Now if I give permit, it will be allowing only those particular attributes, right? So if I hit C, it's gonna continue, and however it's gonna not saved in the database. Now if I go back to the app, now if I remove this byebug and uncomment all the changes, now I am going to do a mass assignment. In this mass assignment, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the params hash and I'm going to require only the hash with the key post. So it will give the hash which is stored in this post key, and then I'm going to allow only attributes title and body in this hash. Even though this particular hash is gonna have values for ID or created or updated, and I'm gonna allow just title and body. So this is a security reason. So what happens? It's gonna return that hash, and this hash is gonna be given as an argument to this new method, and this new method is a constructor, and it will assign those arguments to the newly created post object. And finally, we save the object. So if you see, we have reduced the number of lines of code to just 2 from 5 or 6. So if you have 1000 attributes, you will have 1000 lines of code. But using mass assignment, you can simply reduce it to 2 lines of code, no matter whatever the number of lines of attributes you have in a particular object. So if I save that, go ahead, and if I say with post method and mass assignment, sorry, I have made a typo again. I'm bad with spellings. It means require, right? Good to go. Go back and click create post, and our post is successful. If we go back and see, we have the post in the database, right? Okay, and with that done, I hope that's it. We have to do these things to handle the data from the form to the data to the Rails application. Now the next thing is, if you see, we have this params.require.permit title comma a title comma body. Suppose if I have 100 attributes, what it does, I'm gonna put comma, add that attribute, type in the attribute, comma, and it's gonna go long, and it's gonna make this whole code look untidy and it's not suggested. So what I do is I define another method called def get params and end, and this method is gonna return the parameters which are to be assigned right here, or nothing but the hash which is to be stored here. So what I do, I take this line of code and type it right here and say return. So this is actually a straightforward method. It's gonna, this, whenever this method is gonna be called, it's gonna return this one, which is the parameters we need. So I give here just get params. I call the method get params, right? And one of the beauty of Ruby is there is no need that you have to give return method. Whatever is the last statement of function, it will be returned. So there is no need that you should give return. It's better if you give just the params, but for to be more meaningful, you can just give return params dot request and that permit method. And now if I save this method and if I go back and run it again, we're gonna still save it into the database. So that's a better practice. We put the the way of getting the parameters from the params hash into a separate method and call the method in this particular new constructor, right? And there is another problem here. If I give just this define just this method, what the user can do is he can come to /post and call get params, and this is a bad practice because this method can also be called by the user in the URL. So to avoid that, what we can do is we can make this method private. So what this private is gonna mean is that this method can be called only inside this new or create method and cannot be called by the user by giving the method name in the URL, just like new or create, right? So that's what it means. You just make the method private and it will be accessible only inside the class and cannot be accessed outside the class. That's the meaning. By default, these two methods are public and this method is private. So I hope that's it. Today we have learned how to create a form, and using that form how to submit some data to the controller and save the data into the database. And we have also seen how to do that through get request and post request, and also we have seen how to get the particular attributes from the params hash, that is post, and also permit only a particular attribute in that particular hash. Hope this session was useful to you. Keep watching my next upcoming videos to know more on this app, and if you like this video, don't forget to like this video. If you are not subscribed, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.